What's up, everybody? Welcome to the 43rd edition of Tequila Tuesday, brought to you by our sponsor, Sendoso, Scotty's Little Sales Club's sending partner. We are here with my good friend, co-founder, partner of Thursday Night Sales, Ms. Amy Volas. For anybody who doesn't know, Amy is the CEO and founder of Avenue Talent Partners and has been an executive sales and marketing recruiter for a number of years now. And we get into all sorts of fun conversations on Thursday Night Sales and offline about good and bad interviewers and interviewees and all that kind of stuff. And a couple months ago, I said, hey, I haven't had you on Tequila Tuesday yet, trying to give you a break. You already have to spend Thursdays with me. You probably don't want to spend Tuesdays with me also. But I said, what if we do like a mock interview where you're the interviewer and I'm the VP of sales candidate, and good, bad, ugly, let's show people what it's really like. And so that's why we are here. So we'll do that a little bit, and then as usual, drop all your questions in the chat. I got my notepad here. I'm gonna write everybody's names down. I'm gonna try to get to as many questions as humanly possible. I want you all to ask questions primarily of Amy, but if there's any of me, I'm happy to answer as well. And Amy and I have a pretty good rhythm and rapport going back and forth, obviously. And we'll do our best to help everybody out. So sound good, Amy?
Yes. Sorry. One of my hire / candidates / been through the ringer people is here. So sorry, we're just messaging. Yes, okay. I am ready.
That's okay. All right. All right. So I'm kind of waiting for the like ring-a-ling-a-linga.
Should I pull out I thought that was a Thursday only, maybe after a little bit of champagne, but we can do this. I'm going to do my ring-a-ling-a-linga. Who wants the ring-a-ling-a-linga? I'll do it if everybody wants it. If you don't, I'm not. Okay. Okay. I got a little soft spot for my TNSers. All right, Scott. You ready? All right. So here's the backdrop. We got to set it up. Okay. So Scott, let's say you get referred to me. We don't know each other. I like a lot of what you've done on paper, but we're not sure if the dots connect here. And I'm recruiting for an A-round, well-funded startup that mishired looking for a VP of sales. How about that?
They already mishired once? Okay.
They already mishired once.
Okay.
And they brought in, and it wasn't my mishire, for the record.
Yeah.
They brought in yours truly to save the day. Yeah. Right. So do we like this?
I do.
Scene? Okay.
I do.
And scene. All right. So 1, 2, 3. Ring-a-ling-a-linga. Ring-a-ling-a-linga.
This is Scott.
Hey, Scott, it's Amy Volas with Avenue Talent Partners.
Hey, Amy, how's it going?
It's going well. How are you?
All right. Thanks for making some time for me today.
Right back at you. I have heard so many things about you, and I love what I see on paper, but I'm hoping that we can spend some time today to dig into what I can't see on paper. So
yeah. Okay.
You ready to do this?
I'm ready. I'm ready.
All right. Well, Scott, here's the thing. Sorry, I'm parched, everybody. I need a little drink. And it's water. So, Scott, forget about what you know about me or what you don't know about me, and let's take away any opportunity that I might be bringing your way. I'm really curious about when you think about all the things that you've done, and if you're going to make a move, what's important to you? Break that down for me.
Well, honestly, the most important thing for me is the overall opportunity. And so what I mean by that is at this stage of the game for me, the compensation package is really not what I'm most focused on in terms of cash. What I'm focused on is, can this be $1 billion plus company in 5 to 10 years? And can we collectively have an outcome that changes everybody's life for a generation or more? So that's number one focus for me. Second focus is I have the most fun and get the most fulfillment in my life when I build things. And I've built things half dozen times before. I like to go in very early where there's, almost no revenue, almost no sales team, and be the one to, build out the process and get the messaging right and define our ICP and kind of sell this sucker myself and make sure we're off to a good start, and then bring in some of my, talent and folks that I know and often have worked with before on an AE basis, and, grow everything up. And that journey I have found gives me ample opportunity to coach people up, help them make changes in their lives, help them become better people, more successful people, get more opportunities later on. And it's a bit addicting, and I stepped away from it for a couple of years and was doing some things on my own primarily. And I miss the camaraderie and the team building component, and feeling like I'm making a big impact on a lot of people's lives. So those two things are what matter the most to me right now.
So let's break that down. So the two things that I hear from you is you want to be part of something that's going to mean something in 5 to 10 years. You don't want to go for the fluff. And the other thing is you miss the people, that dynamic of working with people, bringing people together and being part of that build of your nails dirty in the details, doing the things when it comes to process, when it comes to structure, when it comes to deals, and understanding what works, what doesn't work, and putting that engine together to be able to scale something. Did I hear you the wrong way?
No, that's exactly right. I can be a part of a team if I go work for, I don't know, IBM or Salesforce or something like that. But frankly, I don't want to spend all my day with other executives. That's not where I get the most fulfillment. I want to spend my time with people who are earlier in their career, who are at a point in their lives and career where, they're ready to dedicate like everything to this particular opportunity. And they feel like, kind of now or never. Like, I'm willing to do something now that I've never been willing to do before, and I want to help them get there. Those are the kind of people that I have always associated with the most. And those are the people that, I want to be around again.
So let's talk about this, right? So you missed the team aspect. You stepped away for a couple of years. I'd love to dig into that in a minute, not right now. But when you think about going back, because doing your own thing is quite different than doing it for somebody else, as you know. So when you think about going back, and I know it's got to be all about the people that you're working with to do the sales thing. I hear you loud and clear, but let's be realistic here for a second. You're also working for others. So not yourself anymore, for others.
Yeah.
You and I both know there are all sorts of different founders and executives out there. And I'm an early stage gal. I work with founders that come in different shapes and sizes and backgrounds, and they're not all created equal, just like sales leaders. So while I hear you want to run autonomously, and I get that, and I appreciate that, talk to me about the intersection between you and that executive team. What does that look like? What kind of communication do you need to have? What's important to you? And by the way, it's okay to break interview rules with me, to tell me what you absolutely hate. The more I know, the better I can do. So you're in a safe place. I'm not judging you, but I need to understand this, because if all of a sudden I don't, then I'm just throwing spaghetti up against the wall, hoping that it sticks. So I'd really love to understand that particular piece, especially going from your own thing back to that thing, because that's a different thing.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. If you knew me a little better, you'd know that I'm not going to hold back. So we're simpatico on that. It's really important to me that whoever I go work for in this next role kind of understands that they are hiring me because they don't know what to do. So when they hire me, I expect them to get out of my way, and I expect them to support me by getting out of my way. And then when I need something, clarity, budget, vision, whatever you call it, then I want them to be there for me. And that's very important for me, in particular in about the first year and a half or so. As we scale, as we get a little bigger, the stakes get higher. I know the game. I know that's when, the first time founder syndrome kicks in, and they try to tighten the screws a little bit, and they took a big check, and now all of a sudden they think they know how to run sales orgs and all that kind of stuff. I expect that, to come in the back end of my time somewhere. Up front, that's not going to work for me. So when you say like, what aren't you looking for? Like, I'm not looking for somebody who's going to be breathing down my neck all the time, asking me, why are we doing this? What about this thing? I read this thing in the news the other day. I heard this podcast. I don't need all that noise in my life. Okay. I've been there, done this half dozen times before. 5 of them I would call successfully. 3 of them I would call really successfully, and 1 of them massively successfully. So I just don't need that kind of oversight, and I don't want to be around somebody like that. What I do like the idea of being around is a founder who is interested in learning about sales and how to build a sales org. What I am interested in being around, particularly if it's a first-time founder, is somebody who's humble enough to understand that part of my role as an old timer in the industry now is to be a bit of a mentor, and I'm okay with that. And I sign up for that dynamic. I know that, some of these first time founders are going to make some mistakes. They might be, a little emotional. They might be a little like flighty, unfocused, all this kind of stuff, irrational, prone to new ideas and information. I'm okay with that. I kind of look at my job as to pump the brakes on them a little bit and say, hey, listen, I know you think we could save a bunch of money by cutting everybody's commission. Here's what's going to happen if you do that. Because I've been through those kind of, games before, right? So I'm interested in that kind of opportunity to be a bit of a mentor and an elder statesman amongst the executive team. One other thing that I would say that I'm looking for that's super important, Amy, is I'm an over communicator. So, and I'm also extremely responsive. So what won't work for me is if I ask for something and I have radio silence for 24 to 48 hours. And frankly, I don't care what day of the week it is. I'm one of these people that can't really turn it off. I don't manage my team underneath me that way, but I manage up that way. So if it's Friday afternoon and I send you a message and you're my CEO and say, hey, I'm waiting on sign off on this particular thing so we can, purchase this tool or we can start these new hires on such and such date, and I don't hear from you, and I have to follow up with you again on Monday afternoon, like that's going to drive me nuts. Because in the founders that I work for, if they message me, even if it's a Saturday, and I know it's like taboo now, you're not supposed to message people on weekends and off hours and whatnot, but that's up to me to set that boundary. And I'm okay if my founder sends me a note on Saturday afternoon, I will reply quickly because that's just the way that I roll. And so I need that same communication style. It's really important to me. So those are a few things that I'm looking for and not looking for.
This is really helpful. And I should have probably prefaced the fact that while you're speaking, I'm taking notes. So while you're looking at me, I'm not necessarily looking at you, but that's what I'm doing over here. So you've got my undivided attention.
Oh, good. I figure that, you're a big like New York Times crossword puzzle gal or something like that. You've been doing this a while. You can multitask.
I was actually on Twitter talking about you, but I digress.
You can live tweet the interview, that would be a new thing.
I want to go back for a second. And you talk about having a seat at that table, to have the voice, to be the mentor, to be the person that they turn to, that you're owning the revenue function, and that the plan that you're putting in place is adopted. But one of the things that I see sales leaders struggle with is they talk a lot about having a seat at the table and they don't know how to get it and they don't know how to keep it. So I love that you're talking about over communication. Can you describe, especially with a humble founder, right? But they have a board, or they go to a conference, or they read a SaaStr article about what they should be doing, and it's the complete opposite of what you're doing. How do you set those expectations to really dig into re-emphasize the seat that you earned, the seat that you continue to earn, and that you know that your plan is the plan for the business, regardless of all the noise that's flowing around us? Because I see this happen a lot. and it starts the crack in the foundation where then it becomes us versus them. So talk to me a little bit about how you would deal with that, please.
Well, number one, I better be in the boardroom with them. If I'm excluded from the boardroom, then they have already set up a dynamic of us versus them, and it will never go away. Now, I'm sure they need to have conversations every now and then that I'm not privy to when they're doing the next round of funding or things like that. Not every conversation is for me, but that board better hear my voice, and they better get FaceTime with me and vice versa. If they want to ask me questions or understand why I'm doing something, I should be there defending myself or explaining myself and saying, hey, this is why we're doing it this particular way. I don't need a founder trying to articulate it, often very poorly, on my behalf. So you want to tee up a situation where it's not us versus them. You include the VP of sales, the VP of marketing, the VP of CS, bring them into those board meetings. It doesn't mean I have to sit there through everybody's segment, but when we get to the period of the meeting where we're supposed to talk about sales, I should be there. And honestly, that's like a non-starter for me if the founder, is not comfortable with that for some reason. And I know that some people aren't, and that's fine. That just means that we wouldn't be, the right fit together. As far as the noise goes, I mean, I expect that, I want and expect a founder to be, and a CEO to be interested in learning more about sales. So I think it would be a little bit worrisome if they weren't reading things or listening to things or talking to other people. The problem is if you read this one SaaStr article and treat it as, one of the 10 commandments that just came on down from the mountain, because every situation is different. So if you come in all fired up because you read this article about, the SDR AE model and, try to tell me that we need to switch and we need to switch straight away, I have no problem explaining to you why that's going to be a poor idea. And I better be able to articulate that. And I trust myself to be able to articulate why it makes sense in the context of this thing you heard or read and why it doesn't for our business. So, I think that it's okay for them to ask and even challenge, a little bit of what I'm up to. If I can explain it and justify it and the results are backing it up, then those conversations should be quick and they should be a little more infrequent. If that conversation is a daily thing, a weekly thing, or even a monthly thing, that's probably not going to work for me. That's going to start to get old, real fast. Because I'll just feel like I'm being questioned and not being trusted at all.
So let's think about the board meeting. That's a different executive table to be sitting at. How do you prepare for the board meeting? What do you present? What does that look like? Talk to me a bit about the metrics that you find are important to measure. And why are they important to you to measure them?
Well, honestly, the things that I measure and that are important to me are kind of irrelevant. The only things that I need to present in that meeting are what's important to the audience in that particular meeting. And maybe secondary to that, what's important to the founder and the CEO. I'm certainly not going to overshare. I'm not somebody who's going to prepare for 9 hours and stress out about this board meeting. I think the first time I ever went to a board meeting, I was over prepared and scared myself. And I got out of the board meeting thinking this was just as easy as every other damn meeting, and these people are totally normal and they put their pants on one leg at a time. And they just happen to be a little bit more rich and a little bit older than me, more advanced in their career. So I'm kind of beyond being intimidated by them. What I need to know is, what do they want to see? Why do they want to see it? And how do they want the information to be presented? So the how is really important, I find. I think the default is, let's build a deck. Well, some people don't like decks. And some people are very text heavy in decks. And some people just show a fancy chart in a deck with no explanation. So, I will ask the founder, like, when you've presented things before to the board, how did you do it? Was it all verbal? Did you write up a document? Was it a little deck? How text heavy? What kind of graphs? And so I'm trying to solve for what the audience wants to see with very little regard to what I think is important.
Super helpful. I want to completely switch gears here.
Okay.
There are lots of different kinds of sales leaders. Speaking of SaaStr, totally love Jason Lumpkin's article about the 48 different kinds of sales leaders, or Doug Landis's article about the superpowers. I want to talk about your superpowers that you bring to the table that make you and different and special and unique, and what's attributed to your success in terms of your sales leadership and the things that you do that nobody else can do the same way that you do.
Well, I don't know that nobody else can do what I do. Number one, I think there's probably plenty of other people who can and plenty of other people who do. What makes me different and unique? I think there's an authenticity to me that is potentially lacking in other people. I didn't go to some fancy Ivy League school. I don't come from a bunch of money. I come from the poorest county in Northern California that there is. I don't wear a Patagonia vest. I don't put gel in my hair. And I don't try to pretend that I'm not something that I'm not, I talk a lot about the things in my life that I've been through, including health crisis, addiction issues, and so forth. And a lot of salespeople can relate, I think, to some of the fucked up things that I've been through and gone through. And I don't think that many people necessarily have that safe space in their lives to talk about that. So by me creating that environment, having me around them as their boss in the support system, every now and then I play a father figure. Every now and then I play an uncle figure. Every now and then I play a best friend figure. Every now and then I play a therapist or a brother. And I think it works because I genuinely care and I put the time in with each person the best I can to get to know them and understand their situation and what makes them tick. And I think that they come to believe me when I say my job is to help you get where you want to go next. Period. That's my job. And I just think that people don't get that as often as they might, like in their sales leaders. I've heard some of that feedback before, so I'm not here like making it up and just kind of hypothesizing. I'm a little bit regurgitating what I've heard, from other people before. The next thing that I would say is my sense of urgency and my desire and will to win is superior to just about anybody that I know. You don't go through 4 years in the hospital like I did, and coming out and not being a changed person. I came out shot out of a cannon, thinking this could all go away from me at any moment in time. There is no way I'm going to squander any opportunity that I take. So my motor just revs higher in neutral than other people. I'm always thinking about my numbers. I'll have it memorized. I can tell you exactly what I'm pacing, exactly what we're at, month to date, quarter to date. I can tell you our KPIs. I'm obsessing over these things. These are the statistics. If I go back to my sports playing days and sports fandom, like I'm big on my performance metrics and stats. I have all that shit memorized. And I think about it all the time. And I think about my team all the time and what's going on with them and their pipeline and what can I do to get Amy to perform better? And what can I do to turn Scott's month around and motivate Scott? And I talked a little bit before about, my response speed, and I'm on for my team. And I think that, they know that. So if somebody's messaged me saying, hey, I can't find this, a bridge agreement with like the addendum C, where the heck is it? Like they're getting that from me right away. And having somebody, that they can trust to be there for them like that, I think sets me apart a little bit. And to me, that's just my sense of urgency. I'm just trying to get things done. I don't want to lose in any way. I don't want to let anybody down, whether people above me, whether people alongside of me or figuratively underneath me. I don't want to let anybody down. And, it's a big, big deal to me that that we succeed. And I've often read that some of the most successful people get that way because they just have this immense fear of failure and disappointment, and they just refuse to allow that to happen. And I like to think that I'm one of those people. So best answer I got for you.
I'd like to better understand the specifics. So when it comes to obsessing over KPIs, and you've got to measure what matters, and you're thinking about it all the time as you're backing into meaningful discussions with the team. So I'm really clear on your people leadership. What I'm not clear on is the metrics around it and the kind of sales motion that you're supporting. Are we talking inside teams? Are we talking outside teams? Are we talking partnerships? Are we talking enterprise? Talk to me about that and the metrics that you're measuring and how that's set up.
Well, I've done everything except sort of like the Fortune 500 level of enterprise stuff. So, if we get to a place where that's something that, I'm tasked with doing or we're asked to do, I probably will ask around and try to get some support from other people that I know. I've got a massive network and I know people who've done that before, but I've never built and scaled that. I've built and scaled an outside team. I've built and scaled a channel team, partnership team. I've built and scaled inside sales teams all under one roof, as well as with multiple offices, as well as remote. Super comfortable around all those kind of things. And in terms of what like KPIs I measure, I think it's very dependent on what are we selling and the sales cycle, the complexity of the sale or lack thereof, the structure in terms of full cycle AE versus SDR AE kind of model, all this kind of thing, but I want to understand what I would call the metrics to close, which is people's activity to, connecting with a decision maker or an influencer, to setting a demo, to holding a demo, to getting a contract out, and how long it takes to close a deal. I pay a lot of attention to what I call our speed to lead, which is on inbounds. How fast are we getting back to the people? That's a big one for me. Obviously, tracking our average sales price as well as our length of sales cycle. It's super important to me that we have net negative churn. One of the mistakes I made early in my career was all I cared about was closing a deal. That's it. I didn't understand that for me to win big, those clients had to stay and they had to be happy. And my team had to set the right kind of expectation. So learned that lesson 15 years ago. And so I put lots of things in place that actually make my sales team's job way harder to ensure that I'm bringing on the right customers who are going to stick. So customer success has as easy a job as possible, keeping those customers as well as upselling or cross-selling them. So I'm paying attention to our churn, even though I'm not entirely responsible for it. It's something that I'm paying attention to, big time. So those are some of the KPIs. Hopefully I answered your question decently.
You did. And I know we're at time. We had 30 minutes and I want to be really mindful. And here I am asking you a bunch of questions and you've been so gracious to answer them for me. Just sharing with you where I am. So as I said to you when we set up this call, we only work with a handful of clients for very specific roles. And a lot of the dots connect here, but I'm murky on some of the other important dots. And so what I'd like to do is, if you're open to it, if you've enjoyed the conversation like I have, is to find some additional time where I can tell you more about this, the dots that I find that are connecting, and see how you feel about that. And then talk about the ones that I'm a little murky on.
Sure.
Would that be okay for you?
Yeah, no problem.
Okay.
So I'm open to as many calls as we need.
It is your career after all, and we're done. So there you go, everybody.
There we go. Yeah. I mean, certainly like if we were doing a real interview, I would probably pepper you now with 15, 20 minutes of questions, shit that I need to know and want to learn and stuff like that. So, okay. Hit me up in the chat. I need to understand who has questions. Sure, one of you deadbeats thinks you could do better than me, and probably can. All right, Selma. I see Selma was the first person that I saw. You should be able to take yourself off mute, Selma.
Resting sad faces right up in here.
Hey guys, no, mine wasn't actually a serious question. It was more if Scott had a chance to ask you questions. I just threw that in there. Why did the first sales director not work at the company? But
yeah, I didn't get a chance to ask her her questions, but okay.
So you can
Go back into that. I mean, if you want to spend 5 minutes going through that, that's cool. Here's the thing, being mindful of all of your time and being 33 minutes in. And that is absolutely the way that I approach interviews. We got into some of the weeds, right? And the one thing that I would have done differently if this was not in front of all of you is I would have challenged him to give me some more specifics on the things that I needed. Because we're talking a lot about inspirational, aspirational stuff. But I thought that it was really important for all of you to hear the things that he was saying, because that's important stuff. So I was kind of doing a couple different things at once.
So one of the things that I do is purposely avoid all of the details when I'm first asked. Always. Yeah. Because I want to tell the story and control the narrative to the best of my ability. And my strongest suit, my strongest asset, whatever you want to call it, like, is my story. And so I know that a smart interviewer is eventually going to ping me for more details. So every time I get pressed for more details, I'll give more details. So she didn't ask me for a ton at first, then she asked me for them and I gave some. So if you watch the tape back, I give no details. Then I give enough details that I'm hoping people won't press further. But she's super savvy, and so she's going to press me for even more details. I'm totally fine with that, because in my mind, that keeps me interesting, and she can't be done with me because she doesn't have enough out of me yet. She's got to talk to me more. She's got to be intrigued still. So that's just something that I do. I'm not saying that any of the rest of you can or should do that, and Amy might not like that, but that's something that I do and has worked well for me.
Here's why it wouldn't work well for me. So I don't like to play games. Dale, I think you're still here. You've been through my process. You know, I won't mess around with that. So I'm not here to skirt your questions. And in turn, I'm not here to play that same game. Now, also keep in mind, I run a very different kind of firm, and it looks and acts and feels quite different. Dale, again, you can be the judge of that, but, being specific is the number one reason why candidates don't go through the process. And if you can't get specific with me and we're all in the weeds, I'm quite concerned that you can't get specific with them. And so and this is the thing that really bonded Scott and I together, that started me being involved in Thursday Night Sales with him, was we did our podcast and I said, you've got to think of yourself like a Super Bowl commercial, and Super Bowl season is here. I'm going to have to resurrect that posting and put it back out there again. But think about the Super Bowl. Super Bowl has less than a minute max to pack a serious punch. Interview is the same thing, a little bit more time, but the same concept. And a Super Bowl commercial done really well helps you understand why, what, where, all of the things really quickly. If we are too far in the weeds and waxing on, it's hard for me to understand what you've done. And if it's hard for me to understand what you've done, how are you going to be clear for the people that you lead? This is what I think. This is what hiring managers think. These are the things that we're thinking. And so what did you do? Where did you do it? Why did you do it? What lessons did you learn? What was important to you? What are the outcomes? So know your numbers, right? So I'm not going to come in like a wrecking ball on Scott and be like, and this is what recruiters do, and it pisses me off, quite frankly, is how much money do you want? Notice I didn't talk to him at all about money. That comes when we've established some more trust. But understanding the metrics, understanding, so he's talking about, I've done a lot of things. Well, I would want to understand, what are those things, right? The difference between inside and outside and mid-market and all of these things, those metrics are different. What you're looking at is different. What you built is different. I want to understand that. So any good person that's going to be representing you cares about telling your story truthfully authentically and dynamically. And they're going to do what I did, where it's like, wait, I want to play back the tape and help you understand that I'm listening to you. Notice how I didn't pitch him anything. I still wouldn't have done that. And even if we did run out of time in real life, I would have said the same thing, like, hey, look, and I would have said, look, let me give you some additional details. Take a look at this. And if it's intriguing to you, let's pick up where we left off. Most of the time, I'm not on the front end. Taryn is, and she'll have probably 3, sometimes 4 conversations with people to get real clear on those things. So notice I'm not showing up to hump his leg to get him to be excited about this and throw up a bunch of spaghetti against the wall, hoping that it sticks. So your job as somebody interviewing, to all of you, if you're interviewing, is to be super clear and crisp and confident on those things and to be able to weave that into the story. And if you can't do that, that's a real big problem. Because ultimately, if Scott and I did this dance more than once, I would be very clear with him to say, guess what? I am unclear. And if I am unclear, I do not have confidence. And while I've loved X, Y, and Z, D, E, F are super murky to me. And I can't move forward for that reason, or I need to get clear to move forward for that reason.
It's cool to have the different perspective, wouldn't change the way that I do it at all. And everybody should remember here that, like, I've done this a bunch before, and I would never approach an interview at this point in my life needing a job. So there's a little bit of like a bullfight going on between us, where she wants to do things her specific way, and I kind of want to do things my specific way. And, I would be operating differently if I was trying to get my first VP of sales gig or my second VP of sales gig than me, I think, right now, a little bit, and I would feel confident getting more and more detailed, kind of all the time. And I also don't know that any one particular thing that's like murky is an automatic disqualifier. Does everything have to be like nailed in order to get through the screen before it gets to
No.
a founder? I don't know. Maybe it does for some people. For other people, it doesn't. So it's interesting to hear the different perspective, and I hope you all pay attention to it, come to your own, conclusions. But you should certainly listen to Amy. To me, if you're earlier in your career and not necessarily coming from like as much of a position of what I perceive to be strength on my own.
But that's the thing, Scott. Like, I love this conversation because we're going to debate a little bit. That's the problem that I have, right? That creates the us versus them mentality in terms of, look, I'm trying to help you with your career. And if it's like pulling teeth, and that is where ego comes out, right? Like, look, I'm not playing a game with you. I have to be able to connect some dots. These are the dots that I have to connect. If you cannot do that, or you are unwilling, I don't give a shit how great you are on paper. I'm not going to be the right catalyst for you. And I've said that to plenty of people that probably hate me for it, because if you're like that with me and you're looking at me as like, I'm just the recruiter vendor chick, my clients don't look at me like that, and they retain me and they pay me a lot of money to spend this time, to be this thorough, to save them from the initial stuff. So by the time you get to them, you're off to the races, immediately connecting.
Yeah. One of the things that I would have asked 100,000,000% if we stopped where we did and then had 30 more minutes, I would have been like, what's murky? And then she would have said, well, there's some details here. And I would have said, okay, what about my answers made it feel murky? What more detail would you be looking for? And then I would just address those, so it's like, I would start my line of questioning by attacking her objection straight away, which she just told me that she had. So my first question would be exactly what she just said. It's like, there's this stuff that's murky. Okay, what's the thing that's murky? Tell me why you feel that way. What about my response made you feel murky? Okay, and then I would try to handle it. That would be something that I would have done. So,
I think if it was a real interview, I would have been very specific with you about, like,
Yeah.
Scott, these are the 3 things,
yeah.
And it's hard because I'm not thinking about any particular client for you.
Yeah, totally. I know exactly what you mean. I didn't even answer the right way because I'm like, well, it depends on what I'm selling.
So this was just a lesson.
That was part of it. It's like, oh yeah. Am I transactional? Am I an enterprise? I don't know where I am. What are we selling? Oh.
Well, and sometimes the questions I ask, they don't make sense to people, and that's okay. And I will stop myself and say, I don't think I'm being clear. Would you like me to ask the question in a different way? Right. And so that takes some self-awareness, because sometimes the way that I'm thinking about it isn't necessarily the way that it's been structured in your career. But the one thing I do want to underscore is I don't care how experienced or not, or what stage you are in your career. If you are interested in spending time evaluating an opportunity, you have to show up to do that. There's a difference. And some of you I've had this conversation with on more than one occasion. You know who you are. There's a difference between having a job move and just looking at what's out there, and a career move with really good companies. I'm here for door number 2. I'm not here to pimp you out. I'm not here to waste my time, and I'm certainly not here to waste yours. And that's a mutual respect that takes a little bit of time to get there. Also, like I said, Taryn's on the front end of my process. I'm the very last step where I'm talking in a very direct way, in a very different way than this. If I didn't have a Taryn, this conversation would probably look a little bit differently than it did today, right? But these are things, for those of you interviewing, these are things that I really, not interviewing for a job, but interviewing people to hire. This is what makes you different, where you're actually trying to get to know somebody. Notice how I didn't pitch a thing. I wanted to understand who Scott was, and I genuinely did, and I genuinely do. So like Scott's number one thing that pulled out of this for me was Scott is his superpower is being a people leader. That is exactly what he stands for. Even if I didn't know him, that he will die on that hill. It's all about his people. He will fight the fight. So, notice how I was taking notes and I'm listening to him and I'm playing it back. Remember, people want to be seen, heard, and understood. And when you're playing it back, you're also hearing it in a different way. And I'm looking at his body language where he's like, yes, you can tell when somebody's vibing with what you're saying, when they feel like they're being seen, heard, and understood, versus when you're just like, okay, check the box. Money's right. Cool. All right. You've done some inside. Awesome. You've also done some outside. Awesome. You've had success. Awesome. All right. Let me get you over to the client. What's the money? Cool. All right. I'll send you over there. And then you never hear from me again. I'm part of my French and we're not at TNS. I can say whatever I want here. That's effing BS. How about that one? So, like, look, I have a checklist. I have to check it. That's when my clients pay me money. I'm very clear with that about candidates, and where they fall short, I'm really open with that. I just had this with a candidate last week where I said to her, they're really murky on the how you forecast. They're really clear on all these other things, but you spend an hour and 45 minutes in a coffee shop with the founder. She pulled up the forecast and you had a really hard time with that. Why was that? And you know what she said to me made total sense. And I gave her a recommendation and she did it. I didn't tell her how to do it. I gave her a recommendation of what she might want to do to recover. Didn't tell her what to say. She did it. Game back on. That's the kind of recruiting relationship that you want, is where somebody's being straight with you, where they're not just patting their own wallets because you're a walking dollar sign, because it means something. It's about a career. It's about a whatever. So I'm on my soapbox. I'm going to get off of it. Are there questions, Scott?
I got it. I got a million people. So I thank you for dropping all these questions. I'm going to start with Dale Z. You go first.
Dale. Where is Dale?
Is he here still?
Did Dale leave? He better not. Dale did. I think he did.
Okay, let's go to Charlie. Are you here, Charlie?
Hey, Scott.
Hey.
Well, everyone asked some really good questions. Mine was pretty generic, but what would have been the first couple questions you would have asked from the way that interview went with Amy?
Well, like I said, I would have definitely dug into the things that she felt I was murky at. So trying to handle like her objections and the things that she perceived me to be weaknesses of mine during that conversation. I would have dug into that. I would have asked lots of questions about the health of the business and like, you know, any kind of numbers that I can get out of her about what's going on in the business, sales, retention, marketing. I would have lots of questions about the product itself. Anything from like, is the product fully baked or is it, you know, half baked and they're trying to go to market while they're building? So like, what's their release cycle? Is it a 2-week cycle? Is it weekly? Is it quarterly? Is it monthly? Things like that. I would have wanted to know a lot about the founder. You know, I want to know who I'm working for and what her perception is of this particular person. I want to know why the last person didn't last. I want to know what kind of team I'm inheriting, if any, and what their performance level is like. And I'm gonna try to get information out of her that gives me some clue as to, is this like a rebuild or like a save situation? Because I'm going in with like the first person failed. This is a Series A startup now. If they shank the second VP of sales, like they're fucked. Like that, it might be a non-recoverable situation, frankly. So I kind of, if I was going into this, I'd be thinking like, I need to save this place or it's going to sink. So there's some things that are a little bit scary about that, some things that are exciting. So I want to know the makeup of the team and the structure and who I'm partnering with and, you know, working alongside and their background and stuff like that. So those are some of the things, Charlie. Is that helpful?
Thanks, guys. Yeah, you guys did great. There were a lot of great questions after this. So thank you for doing this. Go Bills.
Yeah, you're welcome. Patrick Davis, you there?
Yep. Nicely done, Scott. You sound like you've done this a few times, so I'll skip the part about asking what you thought you did well. It seems like you did that in your sleep. I guess I'm most curious if you could take an answer back, which one would it be and why?
I don't think there's any answers that I would take back. I really can't think of one. I'd have to go back and watch the tape, but there's nothing that is standing out to me as like, well, I shanked that one, or I wasn't clear enough on that one. So honestly, I feel pretty confident in my performance, you know? Obviously Amy thought there was some murkiness, but I didn't really think so. Like I thought I provided pretty good detail, but she wanted more, and that's fine. But you're just asking me like what my takeaway was. Like I can't think of anything right now that I messed up or shanked. Now, when I go back and watch the tape, there'll probably be like 40 things, because whenever you watch your own performance, it's just like appalling. And, you know, even the sound of my voice will be annoying. So I'll have to go back and watch and then get back to you.
What can I say, Scott? You always leave us wanting more. Come on now. Well, and also you all have to remember, I do this for a living all day, every day. By the time I hit this call, I'm a little tired and I cut it off. I didn't even give him an opportunity to ask a question. So Patrick, I'm going to answer your question for myself. I always give people grace to ask questions, right? And it's not just me controlling the conversation. I would have said, hey, Scott, I probably would have thrown out like a 10-minute warning. Hey, we're really in the weeds. This has been really great. I'm out of time in 10 minutes, but I want to make sure that I get some of your questions answered. And depending on that, let's figure out where we go from here. That's probably what I would have done. But your girl's fatigued. All right. She's tired tonight.
Well, I also didn't give you any structure of how this was going to go. So there's that.
I don't even know what structure I gave you. I'm like, it's an A-round company. I don't even know what I was talking about. Like, I don't even know who I was thinking of. So
we just winged it because that's what we do. So.
I mean, that's how we roll.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. Good question, Patrick. Ryan Donahue, are you here?
Yeah, I'm here.
Go for it, Ryan.
All right, cool. So the question I put in already got answered, but I'll ask something a little different. So, and this is for both Scott and Amy. is there a single question that that is like a leading indicator that this person is going to be a fit? Or Scott, is there a single question that you can ask Amy that this company would be a fit? Or what is there a best question that you like to ask that helps you?
No. I wish there was like a, silver bullet magic question thing. Not really, Amy, what about you?
Absolutely not. And the
Yeah.
reason being is, notice what I was doing. And I literally was making notes, like listening to Scott, right? Like that wasn't me faking it. Because I actually learn something new every time I hear him talk. But like beyond that, no, it's called having a discussion, right? So like the best questions are me listening. And actually, if I go back in my notes, let me learn how to use this thing. These two things, right? So do you see where I'm like my chicken scratch, right? Superpower and how do you keep a seat? Those are questions that I wanted to ask. And when the time was right, I came back to that. So like, I'm not getting lost in the conversation. I'm still going on, but I come back to it with the question because it struck me like, oh, wait, I want to understand what he's really, really good at. He's telling me what's important to him, but now I want to compare and contrast of that self-awareness of what he's really good at and how he talks about that. So that's the thing that I would say is show up to have a real conversation that you're really in tune to, make notes, and the stuff that strikes you where you're like, oh, I want to learn more about that, or, oh, we didn't get to that, or, oh, whatever. Those are the things to note and then to go back to. So if this would have been in real life and Scott would have said, actually, you know what? I have 3 things I need to like really make sure of. I would have answered those and I would have said, you know what? And now I have 4 things I really need to make sure of. And I love our vibe and these 2 dots really connect. Can we find more time?
I can hear that conversation in my head right now.
I totally can too.
Yeah.
But I did an interview today. I was being interviewed for something and not anything job related. And he was like, what do you mean people don't know how to have a business conversation? I mean, like this, right? So I absolutely detest where people are like, these are the top 3 interview questions you should ask as an interviewer and an interviewee. I hate that because then it's a scripted discussion and the interviews are really meant to get to know each other, to confirm or deny whether it makes sense together. Notice how I didn't treat Scott like a piece of garbage and Scott didn't treat me like a piece of garbage. We were a little bit more guarded because in this conversation, we didn't know each other. I'm doing my Dr. Evil, but like, as that happens, and that happens all the time, we get people that come in like super scar tissue, super PTSD because they're treated horribly. And then you earn that trust. It's like any relationship. But I will tell you this, look at whoever asked about what questions Scott would ask. They were the right ones to ask because he's trying to figure out, is this a safe place for me to even consider? When I talk to people, and yes, I'm very thorough, and yes, I tell stories that talk about how I vet my clients, and these are the things, and I sprinkle in their data into it. So people's questions, I know what they're going to ask by and large. But when it's that time where it's like, okay, we've covered so much, and this is really important for you. What can I answer for you that we haven't already covered? And they're like, I'm good. What? You're good? How are you good? You should be not good. You should be super curious, or you should be like, Aim, I'm good because this role sucks. Okay, cool. Now I know for the future. Can you tell me why this role sucks so I can continue to get better for you? And I know what to bring you in the future. Scott wouldn't go out guns a-blazing unless I was a jackhole to him, but Scott wouldn't go out guns a-blazing and hang up on me. He'd be like, oh, thanks for asking. Here's what you need to know. So when you call me, you can connect those dots. Good, we good. But when you show up and you're like, I'm good over here.
Yeah. Huh? Specifically, I would give her feedback because I would want her to consider me for whatever role she gets next week or next month or whatever, because this relationship between me and her can endure, even if I don't give a shit about whatever company she's talking to. And that's super important to me. So, all right, David Fox.
By the way, for those of you that don't know me, when I start getting crazy and it sounds like I'm yelling at you, I am not. I'm super, super passionate about, like, this is my life's work and I'm here to help. So if all of a sudden it feels like I'm yelling at you, I am not yelling at you. If I'm yelling at you, trust me, you will know. Not yelling. David
Before
Fox.
David.
Hey, so question on, I guess the topic would be ageism, right? So you've got Series A, B founders. They want to make sure you can roll up your sleeves, you build as well as scaled. And to do that, you kind of talk about, oh, well, here's all my experiences, here's the stories behind what I've done. How do you balance the stories without coming across as I've been doing this for 20 plus years? You know, does that make sense?
You're gonna get shamed for that question now.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah. Sorry about that.
Ask it. No, it's okay, because you know, it actually didn't make sense to me. So can you please ask it again? Like, what are you trying to figure? So ageism is a big, broad brushstroke. What specifically in that question are you trying to figure out?
How do you share your stories without it coming across that you are not the one to roll up your sleeves?
So, question for you. Did I tell any war stories during that 30-minute period of time? No. Did I talk about what I like to do? Do you see the difference where I'm going?
Yeah. And I know that you specifically stayed away from getting in the weeds, which is
To some degree, but mostly around just like KPIs and metrics and all this kind of stuff, because I didn't really know what the hell we were talking about and what would be the right answer on some level. But to your point, like, I didn't tell war stories. I wasn't like, in 2010, I was super excited and I built and scaled this thing and I did all this kind of stuff. I just said, here's what I like to do. Here's what I'm passionate about. And at one point I said, I've done this before. I did that before. I didn't go to any war stories though. So in my feeling is, if I tell war stories about what I did in 2005, that dates me and makes me feel like a dinosaur and makes somebody else think, holy shit, that's, a long time ago. If I just talk about specifically like what I love doing, it implies that that's what I love doing right now, not what I used to do or what I used to like to do. You feel me?
I do.
That's my answer. Amy, do you have a thought on that?
I am here for what you just said. I think building on top of that, and David, you and I have talked about this behind the scenes too. I think it's also about how we talk about what we've done. And, like, age is but a number in my mind. Ageism is a very real thing. I celebrate meritocracy, but I got to tell you, there is a way to talk about things that make you sound relevant. And there are ways to talk about things that make you sound like a dinosaur. So I'll give you an example. When I'm talking to somebody and all they do is, my guy's on the sales floor and my guy's on the sales floor and they still carry a bag and we go out to golf. That is some old school stuff right there. And right now, my clients, 3 of my clients, they're female CEOs. That's not going to fly with them. Oh, and by the way, if you don't realize that you're talking to a woman, the last time I checked, I have boobs. I am a woman. So you being like, my guys, you're alienating me. So like, I'm not trying to turn this into a man versus woman thing, but I am saying the vernacular that you use when people are like, the databases that I used, I use Act On. Act On is from when I came up in the 90s. Like, you are no longer relevant, right? So I want to understand that you are relevant regardless of your age. You could be 21 or you could be 81. If you are relevant about the technology that you're using, about how you learn, and I think there's a thing also about, the older I see somebody get, the more they're trying to overcompensate by name dropping. I don't care who you know. What I care about is what you've done. So being like, well, you know what? I went to Scott Leese's this and Scott Leese that. Is Scott interviewing? Where's Scott? I don't care about Scott. I mean, I care about Scott, but like, I care about what you've done. So don't rely on somebody else's brand to tell your story. So get real clear. That's that Super Bowl thing. Why did you do it? With whom did you do it with? What lessons did you learn? How did you get better? What were the outcomes? And I'm talking like 2 to 3 power statements for each, not an true Hollywood story of, well, back in 1977, I was carrying a bag with my boss and we went to the strip club. No, you didn't, right? Like, so let's stop and let's like come back into the modern age. And I think the vernacular that you're using, and David, I think about how you communicate in LinkedIn postings where you're like, actually, there's this other metric that I'm really focusing on. It's called NRR and NDR. And have you thought about this? Now you are magnetic to me. Now you are telling me about how you're thinking about things and why it's important. And I'm no longer thinking about, not that I ever was, how old you are. I'm turned on by what you're doing.
Cool.
Appreciate it.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, David. Michael Johnson. Is Michael here still?
Yep. Yeah, Scott, I'm still here.
Hey, bud.
Hey. One, I really appreciated just listening to this, getting a more like macro view of like all of your ideas put together. So that was awesome. One of the things that you said is kind of the immediacy for your team. So just this is actually maybe not directly interview related, but your leadership style related in terms of how you balance immediacy for getting back to your team and also giving them space to grow and figure it out on their own.
So the immediacy is not me proactively messaging them. The immediacy is response when they reach out to me. So that doesn't make me feel like I'm, micromanaging or all up in your business because I didn't initiate the conversation. So my sort of policy when I manage people is if you need something, you let me know. And you bark loud. And if I haven't replied in 15 minutes, then you bark again. That doesn't bother me. I make that very clear. And I know some people hate that. I don't mind if I have 17 text messages from you that's like, I need this fucking contract signed, Scott. What is going on? Because that's my job to get it to you. My job is to get it done. So that to me is like, is the big difference. And how do I balance it? Like, I actually will drop whatever I'm doing to get back to what my team needs. And sometimes that makes more work for myself. But I don't really care. Like if I'm working on a particular, let's say I'm working on some spreadsheet or the board deck that I get asked to do. If I'm working on the board deck, I'm not one of these people that's like, I silo my calendar and I'm doing board deck only. I don't do that. I do my board deck. And if I get messages from my team gets my attention and I have to work on my board deck later on. That is me. That's how I do it. Again, not saying that that's healthy or what everybody should do. That's what I do though, and has worked for me. And again, like, I think that's one of the reasons people like to work for me is because they feel like I'm there for them. And there's 70 people on this, event right now. I can't tell everybody who's here, but I would wager at least 25 to 30% of you message or text me every other day, if not every day. None of you wait very long. None of you wait very long for me to respond. And you don't work for me, and I don't work for you. And it's just something that I kind of hang my hat on a little bit. So it means a lot to me, Michael.
Awesome.
Yeah, thanks. Is Mike Simmons still here?
He left.
He left. Okay. What about Jory Anderson?
Hey, Scott, I'm still here. And Amy, how's it going?
What's up, Jory?
What's going on? So for my question, you answered most of it, and I think that was partly due to the context of the interview, and I jumped in a little late. So on that side, I think you answered my question. I think some of the main part, though, of like you're kind of controlling the conversation side from the interviewees or interviewer's perspective is like, are you always trying to play on your field, or do you go down to their level? And I feel like you kind of answered that with like, I'll play on their level when I ask them the questions of like, what was murky to you, and actually go into the objection handling side of things. So is that just typically your style? Like, let's just come off as capable,
yeah,
pretty sharp, and then I'm going to peel back the layers of what they want, so that way I can answer that. And again, Amy, I'm the same way. Like I interview,
I'm sorry,
Go
Jory.
ahead,
Go ahead. Go ahead,
No,
Jory.
you're good. I was just saying when I've interviewed like VP of marketing, was what we're trying to hire currently. When I've interviewed them, I'm sort of the same way. Like I ask very direct questions and I want like really good answers because we've been burned so many times on the like they know how to do it on a sheet of paper, but the execution isn't there. And we're a startup, and it's like if you can't get your hands dirty, then like I really need somebody who can execute first and maybe can even grow into this role. And Scott, for you, it sounded like when you were answering her questions that I would have questions of like the murkiness of like, can you actually get your hands dirty? Although you answered a lot of that with like what you want to do and that you're pace metric driven. So I would get some more confidence there. But that was kind of what I was curious about on that side. Like, is that just the game you're always going to play? And you said yes.
It's just kind of the way that I sell. I sell that way as well. Like I'm not somebody who, let's say we're demoing Zoom. Let's say I'm supposed to demo Zoom. I'm going to show like 2 or 3 features that I think are super important. And then I'm just going to say, what do you want to see? What feels most important to you? And I let other people kind of drive. And then I just show all those kind of things. So that's just my style, is to not go straight into the weeds. I don't want to be in the weeds. That's just me.
Yeah.
So it requires somebody to be super skilled to get me there. And Amy is. So I have no problem going there. I just like, I'm not gonna be the one to be like, let's go to the weeds now, Amy. Let's go have that call. That's just not me. So,
Right.
Well, it's also my responsibility to know that, right? So like there are lots of different kinds of people. And I can say this confidently about Scott because Scott and I have known each other for a long time, but really, really gotten to know each other over the last 2+ years. And like any relationship, they're all different. But I think with Scott, also, if he's going to go in the weeds, he needs to feel safe too, right? There are trust things. And part of that trust thing, if I'm going to diagnose you out loud, my friend, is Scott's also dealt with some jackholes in his career. And so, like, I know that when it's somebody like Scott that has multiple things that he's done, there's going to be some PTSD there. And it's up to me to understand what that is and then create safety. So, Jory, the one thing that I would say to you is if you're really trying to hire this VP of marketing, and all I deal with are sales and CS roles, I don't deal with marketing. So I can't tell you all the questions to ask. But what I can tell you is this. If you create, and it's going to take a little bit longer. And I say this to my clients all the time, slow is smooth and smooth is fast. I'm going to feel really slow to you up front because I'm going to take my time with the right people behind the scenes, and they're going to appreciate it. And so are you. So that when it comes time for the magic to happen of coming together, it makes sense. And if it doesn't, it's not icky. So if I'm you and you're having these discussions and you're having a hard time understanding theory versus practice, right? And by the way, I have a whole methodology and a whole process. This is like the first conversation, but this is also my own company and part of my secret sauce. I'm not going to tell you all about what that all looks like, but here's what I will say is in that first conversation, look for the body language, look for the tells, look for, if somebody is being like, Taryn is the loveliest person. She will reach out to somebody and people will respond to her like, tell me what it is. Tell me what the comp is. If you can't tell me, I'm not interested. We automatically are not interested in them. Right? Because she's being cool. Like, be cool. Like attracts like. So if you're being a jackhole, that's like, so Jory, I looked on your LinkedIn and I noticed these 10 things and I need you to like, wait, whoa, it's like going on a date and asking me to like go to bed with you. You haven't earned that yet. Right. And so like, if you notice when I was approaching Scott, we eased into that discussion, right? I did it on steroids a little bit because we have only so much time here. But like, you got to think about the fact that like attracts like, and trust is met with trust. Respect is met with respect. And people can smell you a mile, not you, Jory, but like you in general, you a mile away if you're just showing up to get something from someone, and that's it. I don't care if it's SMB. I don't care if it's enterprise. I don't care if it's a person coming straight out of school or if it is a old timer like Scott. You can smell it a mile away.
100%. One clarifying question just to pick on there, and I'm just curious, is when you're saying slow down to speed up, it's a huge term we use in the racing world, but are you saying like the interview process being slow, or the actual, or the multiple rounds, or that specific interview for like the hour-long interview or the hour-and-a-half interview of like, hey, we're gonna go through this? Because a big piece of mine too is definitely the trying to make them feel comfortable so they can answer those really specific questions. Because again, I feel like if you attack Scott with like really direct specifics, like Scott, I don't give a fuck what you did in the past. All I care about is how you did it. Like, show me your playbook right now. Like Scott would be like, no, like he would say like, fuck off, like get out of here. Like I don't. He doesn't need to do at his point in this career. He doesn't need to prove that to you. And so like if you're a sales leader or a CEO going to ask Scott those questions, like, hey, you're barking at the wrong tree. So you need to go get a really good VP of recruiting to help you. But in your idea there, like we're seeing a lot of like slow down to speed up or speed up the interview process because candidates are impatient. So that was my question, is like, are we just talking about first couple interviews, or like let's have 4 or 5 conversations together on that side of it? Because again, I'm right now the market's so hot where like VP marketing or even sales and CS, like they're getting offers quick. So I'm just curious on that part.
So I'm not talking about creating extra steps for the sake of creating extra steps.
Right.
I'm talking about slowing down to understand. And the big thing that I'll say, and you know what, David, call me on my nonsense. You and I have talked. You've been with me behind the scenes. I'm very clear about what's going to go down, right? And what my process looks like. And I am looking for their buy-in. And I'm also giving them agency to interview in other places. I just need to know what's up. So what I mean by slow down to go fast later is, are we establishing that upfront piece where I can get clear? And maybe it's a couple of conversations with me, and are they cool with that? Because look what just happened with Scott and I. If that was a real thing, Scott didn't get anything of what he wanted. If I owned that and said, hey, Scott, like I just got so caught up in your story. I'm murky on like some of the stuff I need, and you have no idea what I'm bringing. Might it be okay? Notice how I asked that. Might it be okay? Not like, I want to schedule more time. Here's my calendar, like pick 15 minutes and I'll like, no. So that's what I mean by slowing down, is being thoughtful in the conversation. And if for some reason you're unclear, I find that most people will either glaze over it, they'll assign it to somebody else in the next step, or they'll assume that they know the answer based on the way that the person showed up. Do not do that. Assumption is the worst part of what's happening in our world right now, in sales, in marketing, in interviewing, and all the things. So if I'm you, what I would be doing when I'm thinking about slowing down to go fast later is to just be present in the moment. And if all of a sudden you run out of time, ask them, is this something that's intriguing enough to you? Because I know we're going a little bit off course, where you'd want to spend a little bit more time with me, and I'll work around your schedule. Nobody is treating people like that. That's what I mean by that. I am not suggesting. So start adding, like now pull in Scott to answer the stuff that you didn't get to because you don't know how to interview. And then all of a sudden pull in David Fox and have him do a situational interview and have him be the bad guy and role play. Oh, and wait, and I'm still not clear. This is the one thing that I will tell you that I counsel my clients on all the time. If you are unclear, do not make an assumption about this leader that they are bad. Stop and use it as a signal to ask them. So you just told me that you can do all of the things. That actually scares me because I have PTSD from our last leader that said the same thing. Can we talk about what each one of those things means specifically so I am clear? Now, if you as a candidate think I'm a jerk, that's a good founder right there. That's a self-aware founder. That's somebody that wants to understand you. If you think that's too much and you want to go for the next thing that just gives you an offer, that's on you. And not every candidate that's great on paper is a great candidate for you. Get clear with that.
Sure.
Be okay with
sure.
that.
Thanks for your time, guys. I appreciate both that, Amy and Scott.
You're welcome. And Joy, I wasn't yelling at you. I just, again, get like crazy about this stuff. So.
I talk the same way. People always think I'm like really angry when I'm talking about stuff in like our board meeting like the other day, but I'm like, no, I'm actually not angry. I'm super happy. It just, we got a point to get it going.
We don't have a ton of time left unless I'm
I just saw
mistaken.
your text, Scott, you know I'm a sucker, so you
Okay.
just do whatever you need
Okay.
to do.
Let's try to go a little rapid fire. So you and I try to be a little quick with our answers, because there's like a bazillion people that ask questions. So I want to try to get to people, but I don't want to be here forever. I'm solo parenting right now, and I have literally no idea where my kids are. They're somewhere outside in the dark. They don't have their phone. I literally don't. It's like 1985 up in this bitch. So, okay, let's go quick. Mike Cook.
Oh, yeah.
All right, so I will ask my question quickly as well. So like the landscape has changed with usage-based pricing, product-led growth coming, like the fundamentals really have been the same. So how far back do you think you can go for examples of success, getting into specifics? You kind of touched on it a little bit earlier, but like how far is too far, and where does like the relevance break in terms of using your past success to discuss examples in an interview?
Yeah. I would be very careful about bullshitting my way through some kind of level of experience. I can't exactly remember how Amy phrased it in the mock interview, but it led me to specifically say, I've never done Fortune 500. I don't know if you remember me saying that. And if you needed that, that would be something that I would have to ask for help with or whatever. So I don't want to stretch and kind of fib that I've got some kind of PLG type experience. You know what I mean? And like say, well, in 2005, I worked at this company and it kind of was PLG, even though PLG didn't really exist then, but we were doing it. It just didn't really call it that. Like that would not be what I would do. But if she said to me, you know, this is a mid-market, you know, kind of sale, couple buyers, not super complex, but not super easy either. Like, what's the most relevant experience with that? Okay, 2016, I started at Quality. If she says something about SMB, I'd be like, well, I've done that 3 or 4 times. This 2004, 2007, 2011. So I've mentioned it. But I hope I'm answering your question. I'm trying to say, I would give some examples, but I really wouldn't try to stretch and try to show that I actually have done something that I really haven't, you know? So I hope that was somewhat helpful. Amy?
I think like, I want to go back to like some of what David had asked about, you know, ageism, and I'm thinking about ageism, but when you've got a lot of experience, what you did in 1995 doesn't matter right now to me. So I want to make sure that it goes back, Mike, to can you connect the dots without BSing me? And that could be 3 roles ago if we're talking about building something from scratch. But I think for my clients, I have to think about relevance for them. And if the only dot that you can connect when it comes to building a team from scratch is 10 years ago and everything else is under somebody else's playbook, you become irrelevant. So if it's one thing and it's a long time ago, that relevance doesn't exist as much as it should. If it's multiple things, that's a common thread. Awesome. You could say, I've actually done this 5 times, starting from now back to 10 years ago. Which would be more interesting to you? Because I could talk about all of it. And now you're not assuming what's relevant to them. So that's how I do it. That's rapid fire for me. Sorry, it's about as short, sweet, to the point I'm going to get.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, Wayne Morris.
Scott, did you find the kids?
I did. You probably couldn't hear me, but I just went outside and whistled like a half dozen times and he heard me.
Yes.
Hey, Scott. Hey, Amy. My question is around deciphering the stage of the startup. So a lot of founders think that they're further on than they are, and they actually haven't achieved an evolution from founder-led selling, and the founder's still selling, and they still haven't figured their shit out. Actually, in a really worst case scenario, and you know, to Scott's point, he likes really early stage companies. A lot of them actually haven't figured out product market fit, and if you're the first VP of sales going in and the founder thinks they figured out product market fit, but they actually haven't, that can be a real shit show for you. So my question to both of you, because I think it is on both of you as the recruiter and as the potential candidate, is, how do you uncover the stage that they're really at, not the stage that they think they're at?
So for me directly, for a client to work with me, there's a lot that they have to go through and that they have to show me. And this isn't like an Amy Volas ATP plug, but I do only work with a handful of clients at a time. And I am absolutely here to show people that you can do a wildly successful business without being a dirtbag. And I also want to show people that not all recruiters are gross, and I'm not leading people to the slaughter, truly, right? Like, I'm not Nostradamus. I don't have a crystal ball. I can't tell everybody what's going to happen in 5 years, but for the best of my ability, they have to show me their financials. I get into their runway, their run rate. If they're going for more funding, I want to see their pitch deck. Because when I'm talking to a candidate, and like Scott was saying, he's going to ask questions about product, about evolution of product, about product market fit. If it's founder-led selling, I'm going to understand and talk about how many logos have they sold. If it's SMB, that's going to look different than enterprise. How long did it take? Do they have any repeatability within that? How much revenue do they have? Not what they're projecting. I can spot that from a mile away. They're like, well, we should finish the year at 15 million. No. Where are you right now? And actually, what does your pipeline look like? Because if their pipeline is like Ricola, like there's nothing there, that's a whole different gig, right? So like this is where my knowledge helps me significantly understand what's what. So if any of you nincompoops that come knocking on your door, know your girl has already vetted the mess out of her clients. They have to show me those things. And I don't care if they've already paid my retainer up front, and I have pre-work that they have to give me before we go into an extensive discovery process. If they're giving me 1-sentence answers, if they are like confidential, can't tell you, and we sign MNDAs and all the things, if they are not going to do that, I will happily refund your money and we will not do this search. I'm not playing that game. That's not how this is going to go. So those are some of the things that I look for. Scott, what about you?
I was distracted and missed the beginning of the question trying to corral my kid. So
yeah, so I said, Scott, you go really early stage. There's a really big difference between a firm that has got product market fit and a firm that's evolved from founder-led selling and so on and so forth. And often founders think that they have evolved from founder-led selling and they haven't. Often founders think they have product market fit and they haven't. So for a VP of sales going in early, those are things you really need to know. Otherwise, you could be walking into something very, very different. So my question to you, Scott, is how do you figure that shit out ahead of getting it?
I sort of look at it as my job is to make the product market fit. If that makes any kind of sense. So I just assume that they really don't. That's my like operating assumption. And what I care most about is the product done? Or are you still like baking the cake? And that is to steal a line from Amy, that's like a PTSD thing of mine. The one shank that I have on my resume, I didn't do a good enough job of vetting that, and the product wasn't ready. And we would bring in deals and they wouldn't ship the product, and it just was like a total fucking nightmare. So if the product is like ready, like it's done, obviously we're gonna, improve upon it and whatnot. And I believe that I understand the pain we solve and why it's important to solve. And I understand the market opportunity. Like, I put the trust in myself that I will be able to take this to market and go sell it. And if I can sell it, I feel like I can break it down and teach other people how to do it. But I don't want to try to go do that anymore with a half-baked product. That's too early for me to go in. You don't have to have customers. For me, when I went to Qualia in late 2016, even the founders hadn't closed a deal yet. If you could believe that. None. What they had done was spent over 2 years building the product. They raised a $7 million round to do nothing but buy like 20 engineers and just build. It's a little bit rare to spend that much time just building and not trying to sell. There was a big, big vision, and everybody knew this was going to be a big, big bet. So that's what I'm trying to vet on that product side with go to market fit, founder led selling, and that kind of thing. I kind of just assume that they haven't, and if they have, I'm going to be pleasantly surprised. And I'll ask all those kind of questions. It's not like I'm not going to ask. I just would end up being surprised and, a little bit excited because I'm not used to that, honestly, as I've gone in even earlier typically. So good question.
Thank you.
Spencer Allen.
Yeah, so I had a question that was answered, but I'm really curious to understand from the recruiter's perspective. I guess talking about startup acumen, like obviously if I'm looking at somebody who's built from 1 to 5 or 0 to 5, I can kind of talk through what they did. But let's say I'm talking to somebody who's maybe more strategic and has led teams and built teams from higher up. Like, what are you trying to understand in an early stage startup? Like, as far as acumen goes, like I understand not every resume is going to be cookie cutter fit for a job. Like if someone's trying to position themselves for an early stage startup, what are you looking for that could possibly qualify them?
If I'm talking about early stage, that's a build, right? So like if you listen to what Scott said when we first started talking about like what's important to him, everything that he was describing is a build. And he also even said, I'm a builder. That's my jam. Like that's what I want to be doing. And I don't want to just hear that that's what you do. I want to hear the signals. So Scott was talking about like, I want to get my nails dirty to even like close a deal to understand what's up. I want to create the playbooks. I want to own the forecast. And I want to hear language about, this is what's important to me. Here's where I did it before. When I stepped in, it was 0. When I left, it was 15 mil, right? So like that screams to me that you've built something from scratch. When it's, well, I think I can, and this is really sexy to me, and I'd like to do this, that screams every red flag to me. Like, I want to do a lot of things. And then there's a lot of things that I try that I think are really cool. And then I get there and I'm like, fthiss.com, right? Like, and I'm not swearing. How about this one, people? But like, I literally, like, my husband and I went to Costa Rica and I was like, I am going to be a woman of the jungle. And this is going to be amazing. I got straight up into the jungle. I thought I was going to be Tarzan. I went on this like rope thing. I was screaming at him, threatening our marriage, threatening every monkey in the jungle to kill it, to burn the jungle down. I am not woman of jungle. I am not going to go on a rope ever again, flying around. No. But you know what? I thought it was really cool. And by the way, Scott, in November, not going to do it when we're in Costa Rica together. But like, here's the thing. It sounded really cool in practice. And then I got there and it sucked. And I think that's a lot of the things that happen. It's not that you're bad if you're not early stage or you're good if you're late stage. The work is different. And so one thing that I will say to you, Spencer, is focus on the work. If you can't tell me about the work that you've done at that stage, that throws up every red flag to me. Because now we're just talking about theory and we're not talking about practice. That doesn't mean that you can't get there. But if you're the head of sales and you've never done that before, and now I'm cleaning up after a mishire and the mishire had the same problem, sorry, not going to be able to cross that bridge with you.
Good. All right. We got Lori Dunn. Is Lori here still? There she is.
Wait, hold on. We're trying to take her off mute.
Gotta take yourself off mute. She should be able to take herself.
Lori, ziplining is different than me being on some rando rope in the middle of the jungle on trees. That's a different thing. Like a zip line, I'm like harnessed in. I'll do that with you.
Fine. Okay. I was trying to like get a sister out of that. Also, it's Tequila Tuesday. I don't remember my question.
Oh righty then. Well, we're gonna say hello to you and then we'll say goodbye to you.
Yeah, hi, love you. Going back on mute. Love y'all.
What about Thomas Idzik? Is Thomas here?
Let me see.
Lost
Nope.
him. Catherine Robles. I see Catherine.
Hold on. I'm gonna be like the moderator here where I'm just gonna find people and unmute them, Scott.
Okay.
There we go.
Is this about the question I asked you earlier? Because I didn't put anything in the chat.
I'm pretty sure you did, or I wouldn't have called on you. I'm just going to chalk it up to it being Tequila Tuesday, and you have been drinking the same glass of water that Lori has. So we'll move on. We'll move on. Brian Barron. Is Brian here?
Hey guys, I'm still here.
Do you remember your question?
I can definitely remember my question.
Perfect. You get a Rockstar pack. Oh wait, wrong show. You don't get anything.
I care
but-
about your question at this stage, though. Let's ask
dang.
that.
Close enough. My question was, it sounds like that we're really, each end is digging into the others and really trying to understand what's behind the curtain. Scott was asking about the CEO, Scott's asking about product, asking about all these things within the company. Is there anything that's off limits when you're asking questions towards a company? Is there anything that you shouldn't ask, or parts of the business that are sort of like should be kept to themselves, or should you just ask whatever you want and let them tell you if it's inappropriate?
What do you think, Amy?
I think there's two things that I want to say here. One, if you have to ask yourself, should I be asking this question or not? You already know the answer. You probably shouldn't, right? That's your own gut saying, maybe I'm treading in a place that I shouldn't be treading. So that's step one. Step two is I really encourage and support open, honest, collaborative conversation. I really do. And it amazes me how scared people are to do that, because ultimately each side is judging each other. Let's be real. But let's be honest about this. This is no different than a sales meeting. The only thing that you're selling is yourself. And the best sales meetings are when you can have a real conversation. If you cannot have that, you do not feel safe to do that, well, then that's a tell on the opportunity. Do you think it's going to get any better later? So these are the tells that I tell people to look for. It's the how we ask it, right? So it's kind of like when a client calls me and they say, I saw somebody's LinkedIn profile and I'm not cool with the commentary that they have. I'm very uncomfortable about that. And my response is, talk about it. Do you think it's going to go well if they go to the interview and they say, we have a policy here about how you use your voice and I don't like what you wrote and you're not going to do that? You're immediately shut down like, nope. But if it's, hey, I saw you had a very spirited conversation. I'm curious about that. What was your point of view? What got you excited about that? Now I'm understanding context. See the difference? It's the how. Or when people come and they're like, to find, I see you've got 2-star Glassdoor reviews. It must suck here. What? Like, what are you doing? No. You don't know context. And by the way, half of Glassdoor is jacked because it's some jackhole that's in the dark web that doesn't know how to have a real conversation. That's like a big troll. Half of those are not even true. Or the good ones are, hey, as a company, we'll incentivize you to write a good review. Like, take that stuff with a grain of salt. And if you do see something or you see a common theme, here's how I'd ask about it. I do my research. This is a really big deal for me. And I do have some PTSD about some bait and switching. I'm really curious. When I look at reviews across the board, there's one common theme for when it doesn't work out. Can you tell me how you're thinking about that as a leadership team? If somebody has a problem with that, well, then that's a problem for me. So that's how I'd be thinking about it. Scott, what about you?
I don't know from my end what would be an I don't even know what an inappropriate question, would be. because it just, the only things I can think of are just so obviously inappropriate that nobody should fucking ask them. So I guess outside of the ones that are just obviously inappropriate, I will ask whatever I think is important for me to understand. And if they want to say, I'm not comfortable sharing our ARR numbers with you right now, that's fine. They can say that. If I say, hey, I'd love to talk to a couple reps on your team, and they're like, yeah, we don't want you to do that. Okay, that's fine. Like, so for me, I will just ask the things that I want to know, and I will let somebody tell me, no, thanks. And I kind of operate that way, as well. Like, I think that I'm kind of an open book. You can ask me whatever you want. But if you ask me something that I don't want to talk about, or I don't have time to deal with, I'm just like, I can't do that. Nope, not going to go there. Don't have enough time for that question right now. That requires a longer answer. Don't have time for it. So I think I kind of just go for it, Brian. Other than the obvious stuff that I hope is obvious to everybody. Oh, there was a question in chat a long time back. I can't remember who asked it. I think Kelly. Is Kelly Venable here still? No, she's not here.
She gone.
She gone. Well, her question was, Amy, how did you feel when Scott talked about some of his personal stuff? And was that too much? Was that the right amount? How would you advise somebody, with that kind of thing? How do you strike the right chord there? So maybe we can dovetail Brian's question into that one that I know Kelly was asking. What do you think about that?
No, for me, no, it actually endeared me, and it felt like we were establishing some trust if he felt comfortable sharing that with me. What I would do is so the word addiction is something that people don't understand. And if that were something that I was like, well, wait, what does that mean? And how might that come up? Or would that come up? Or why would that come up? I would just be listening for that in our next conversations. And part of that would be, I saw her question. It would be like, would you tell your client about it? I tell my client about a lot of things. Like when you're working with a good recruiter, they're able to tell your story for you so that you don't have to, right? So I am working with a candidate right now that got fired, and it was a gnarly story. And I have screenshots and there's all sorts of things. And that person will never be able to say that in an interview, but I can on their behalf. And so that's the thing about that trust is, if you don't feel like you can trust me, then we shouldn't work together, because I'm going to understand that, right? I'm going to say, if that got brought up, sometimes people are understanding, sometimes they're not. If they're not, great, then they're not for you, but it's the how. So let's not have assumptions happen. Let's figure out how we want to talk about it. Are you okay with me telling your story? I always ask for permission. So I think it goes into that depends category of knowing your audience and knowing the room. And quite frankly, I know Scott's story. I have no issue with it whatsoever, but I'm thinking about it, or I'm answering it from the lens of, if I didn't know Scott, that would be that trust thing of it's kind of like, I have a potty mouth from time to time, and people feel very comfortable saying words to me. I don't care. I say them right back. But in an interview, you can't show up being like, what's up, mother effer? You can't do that. You can do that with me, but you can't do that. So I want to know, do you have discretion? Do you understand time and place? Can you read a room? That's also part of being a leader, right? And if somebody is constantly swearing with myself and with Taryn, I will address it to be like, yo, fellow potty mouth here, time and place. You do that, and you might turn off a female founder that doesn't swear at all. So just be cognizant of that, right? That's a good relationship, to be open and honest. Now, some would argue, well, it's who I am, and F it. If they don't like that, F them. Well, great. Then you know what? We've avoided a big catastrophe here. This isn't the right thing for you. Cool. So
yeah.
I think it depends.
All right, Michael Mendoza. I know Michael's here.
Hey, Scott, hey, Amy. My question was actually around Scott. So when you were going through the interview with Amy, a lot of it obviously was around very early startup. Curious about how you collaborate or what collaboration you have if the team already has like an existing AE, right? It hasn't just been founder-led sales where they have one or two. How important is you connecting with that team? And then what do you do to kind of branch that connection or fill it out that it's the right fit for you? So it's not only founders, is it also important to connect to the AEs or team?
I really like this question because I have a super controversial answer. What is important to me is to figure out what I have, like what these people have hired without me before I got there. Do I have talent or do I have garbage? Do I have a pain in my ass who thinks they know everything, or do I have somebody who's coachable? Do I have somebody who's going to get in line and follow my process, or do I have a lone wolf? Do I have somebody that's ready to be led, or are they going to be disappointed because they don't get to have brunch with the CEO anymore? So that is what I want to know from like a cultural kind of standpoint. And then I want to know their performance. And I'm not going to show up if there's just 2 reps. I'm not going to show up and just like try to throw somebody out the door straight away. Like I want to learn from them what has worked, what has not worked. I want to observe and listen to them, how they're, the emails that they're sending, the calls that they're having, the demos that they're doing. I want to absorb all of this stuff. And if I have people that I think I can work with and that are talented and need, some direction, then I'm going to pour myself into them. And I'm going to show them that I know what I'm talking about by building some pipeline and closing some deals on my own, and then helping them get some of their deals across the line to kind of cement that. If I have people that I don't think are long for this world, once I close my deals, I'm going to go to them and say, this is the way that we're going to do things. There's, you're either on this train or I'm going to throw you off, or you can get off yourself. That becomes a very different kind of conversation. So the couple reps that are in place are not necessarily very important to me. And that's probably not the answer that a lot of people would want to hear, but they're just not. I don't know anything about them yet. So I got to learn first, and then I'll decide what I've got to work with. Feel me, Michael?
Yeah, that's actually perfect answer.
Okay. Amy, do you want to add anything?
So when this comes up, we advise not including the AEs in a VP of sales search. And the reason being is, and I hate to say this, especially if it's after like a mishire and you've got like a mixed bag of what's going on there, chances are a lot of those members of the team aren't going to still be there. And when you're bringing in an AE, there's nothing really, A, they're not trained interviewers, right? They don't know how to interview. And B, these are emotionally based conversations because they're afraid. And I'm just shooting y'all really, really straight. They're afraid, like, am I going to like my leader? Is this going to be a good leader for me? What's going to happen to me? And here's the thing is the leader's not going to tell you the truth anyway. And your opinion, it's one of 2 things. If your opinion really matters, then that's going to be a red flag for the leader that they can't do the job that they need to do as to what Scott has been describing. If it's like, but my AE, we still have brunch, they're going to still come to me. I am now disabled as a leader. And if it's the other way around, you're disabled as an AE. And that's the hard truth. And I'm sorry to say it out loud.
Is Brad Morris here still? I don't think so. No. What about James Calloway? James is here.
And I got to peace out at 9. I have yet to have dinner and I've got a cat screaming at me and I don't even know where my husband is. I haven't seen him all day. So
he's wandered off just like my kids.
He's running around. I got to go with a whistle.
You there, James? I see him. I see his name.
James.
Nope.
Ground control to Major James. Where are you?
All right, last question. Anthony,
Right here.
let's do it.
So the questions that I had in mind while I was listening to the interview, there was no mentions of compensation plans. How do you align that, or when would be the appropriate time to bring that up into the interview?
From my perspective or Amy's?
I would like to hear both perspectives, from the recruiters and from the interviewer.
From my perspective, so we kind of cut at like a half hour, and then I probably would have used, the second 30-minute block to start asking some questions. I would have tried to wrap up our call with me saying something like, hey, before we jump off, like, can we align on comp for this particular role, so we don't waste, each other's time. I've enjoyed learning about this, enjoyed getting to know you. What are we looking at here in terms of comp? Here's where I was before. Here's where I want to be. And, is that in the ballpark or in range for this particular role? So I would do it kind of at the end prior to Amy and I getting off the call.
I agree with that. So thinking about compensation, had we talked about that, I always ask, I actually say, and then I ask, I don't like it when anybody messes with my money. Why would I mess with yours? And so what's important to you? What do I need to know that looks like a yes for you? And that's it. And then if they're like, well, I had a big posting today that popped off and this was discussed. If somebody's like, yeah, well, I need a 500K base and I need to make 7 figures at an A round, I'm going to say, good luck finding that on your own. I'm not going to be able to do that for you. Right. Because like, if we're not aligned on money, and I like to talk about it early and often, if we're not aligned on that, I'm not wasting your time. My process is rigorous. My client's process is thorough. Why on earth would I play a game with you? If I'm really talking about what I represent, and that's respectful relationships, even if we mutually agree that it's a no, if all of a sudden I'm like, yeah, or it's like, you know what, this role is going to give you all those things, and I know that it's not, what in the world am I doing? Do I actually think that you're going to change your mind in this market? No, you're going to get another opportunity that's going to pay the same thing, if not better. So I just don't like it when people play games with such important topics, and money is one of those important topics. Now, I might challenge you and say, well, you told me you want 5 things, and out of those 5 things, every search that I've done has not included all 5 things. And I haven't talked to a founder yet that has done those 5 things. If you can accomplish that on your own, more power to you. But here's what I'm going to be able to accomplish. If that's a deal breaker for you, let me know, because this isn't going to change. I'm crystal clear, like newly Windexed window clear. I know exactly what that looks like. And if I'm being that clear and somebody's like, well, I don't know, I'll see when I get there. No thank you.com for me. Because don't be playing games with me. And this isn't about like window shopping offers. This is about, you got to show up. And if you don't know what yes looks like, and that doesn't mean that things can't change if more opportunities come your way, we just have to be talking about it in a clear and open way. And if you can't do that, I have a hard time working with you. I also am your biggest advocate when it comes to my client. By the way, it's how I get paid. Why would I be a jackhole and mess with your money? I'm ultimately messing with mine. So it's that Kenny Rogers song of, I know when to hold them and I know when to fold them. And I'm going to be crystal clear about what that looks like. So great question, Anthony.
Thank you. And thank you for the insight.
Really good. All right, we're going to wrap it up. Thank you so much, everybody, for being here. I think there was 70 something people for the most of this call. Amy, love you. Thank you so much for spending some time with us. That was a lot of fun, and we'll see you all next time.
I came in like a wrecking ball. Thank you for having me. I hope this was helpful. Scott, you got my heart.
Helpful.
Go yell at the kids now. Bye.
Bye-bye.